Hey, this is LA from LA Show. Please join me for LA Show, the podcast, now available on Spotify, Anchor FM, Breaker FM, Radio Public, and Google Podcasts. You can find me by clicking the link in my bio now. Thank you so much for tuning in. You don't want to miss it, so check it out.
样子知道了蛮好的，不要像染口条的。上不得染口条。
老板，啊，我做，我都在这1米，我1米
So I have an article here from nytimes.com. Coronavirus live updates. Case up nearly 60% as airports expand screenings. This was posted January 28th of 2020. Right now, after repeated offers of assistance, China will allow international health experts to help with research and containment. Here's what you need to know. Death toll exceeds 100 as number of infections skyrockets. The United States is expanding screenings for coronavirus at airports and borders. United Airlines suspends some flights from the United States to China. France confirms 4th case of the virus. Germany and Japan say the virus has spread in their countries. Death toll exceeds 100 as number of infections skyrockets. The outbreak of the mysterious new coronavirus is rapidly spreading, the Chinese authorities said on Tuesday, as the officials' account of known cases jumped nearly 60% overnight and the death toll exceeded 100 for the first time. China said on Tuesday that 106 people had died from the virus, which is believed to have originated in the central city of Wuhan and is spreading across the country. The previous death toll on Monday was 81. The number of confirmed cases increased to 4,515 on Tuesday from 2,835 on Monday, according to the National Health Commission. The youngest confirmed case is a 9-month-old girl in Beijing. Most of the confirmed cases have been in the central Chinese province of Hubei, where several cities, including Wuhan, the epicenter of the outbreak, have been placed under what amounts to a lockdown. Of the total cases, 2,714 are in Hubei. Thailand has reported 14 cases of infection. Hong Kong has 8. The United States, Taiwan, Australia, and Macau have 5 each. Singapore, South Korea, and Malaysia each reported 4. Japan has 7. France has 4. Canada has 3. Vietnam has 2. And Nepal, Cambodia, and Germany each have 1. There have been no deaths outside of China. The United States is expanding screenings for coronavirus at airports and borders. The United States is expanding the screening of travelers arriving from Wuhan to 20 airports and land crossings from 5 airports, federal officials said on Tuesday. Right now, there is no spread of this virus in our communities at home, said Dr. Robert Redfield, director of the CDC, at a news briefing in Washington. The coming days and weeks are likely to bring more cases, including the possibility of a person-to-person spread, he said. Our goal is to contain this virus and prevent sustained spread of the virus in our country. Officials also announced that after repeated offers of assistance, Chinese authorities agreed on Tuesday to allow in teams of international experts coordinated by the World Health Organization to help with research and containment. Americans should know this is a potentially very serious public health threat, but at this moment, Americans should not worry for their own safety, said Alex M. Azar, Secretary of Health and Human Services, at the briefing. United Airlines suspends some flights from the United States to China. United Airlines said on Tuesday that it will reduce flights between the U.S. and Beijing, Hong Kong, and Shanghai because of a significant decline in demand. United said in a statement that it will cut flights starting February 1st through February 8th. The suspension will affect 24 flights. We will continue to monitor the situation as it develops and will adjust our schedule as needed, United said. Delta Airlines and American Airlines have not yet cut flights to China, but have said they are closely monitoring the situation there as the coronavirus spreads. France confirms its fourth case of the virus. A fourth case of the new coronavirus was confirmed in France. Jerome Solomon, an official in the health ministry, announced on Tuesday. The patient is a tourist from Hubei province, Mr. Solomon said. He was in serious condition in the intensive care unit of a Paris hospital, and the authorities were seeking out anyone who had been in close contact with the man who was in his 80s. The previously identified cases affected a 48-year-old man in Bordeaux and a 31-year-old man and a 30-year-old woman in Paris. France is also working with China to repatriate French citizens in Wuhan, with a first flight scheduled for later in the week. Agnes Buzyn, France's health minister, said on Tuesday that about 500 to 1,000 French citizens could qualify. Those who return without any symptoms will be quarantined for 14 days, and those who present possible symptoms will be hospitalized. Other European countries have also asked France to help bring back some of their own citizens on those flights, Ms. Buzyn said. Germany and Japan say that the virus is spreading in their countries. Health officials on Tuesday reported what appeared to be the first known case of human-to-human transmission of the virus in Europe, specifically in Germany and in Japan. Another case was reported in Vietnam. The cases show that countries across the world are now faced with the task of limiting the spread of the disease on their own soil, not just seeking to identify and quarantine ailing patients who had traveled from China. Japan's Ministry of Health, Labor, and Welfare said the first Japanese national and the sixth person in Japan overall to be diagnosed with the coronavirus was a man in his 60s. He had never been to Wuhan, but he had worked as a bus driver earlier this month for 2 different group tours from that city, officials said. The man began experiencing symptoms on January 14th and was hospitalized on Saturday and was confirmed to have the coronavirus on Tuesday. The infected German, whose case was also confirmed on Tuesday, is a 33-year-old man from Bavaria who had been in contact with a Chinese woman in Germany, officials said. The woman was diagnosed with the virus after flying to China. The man was in good condition, German officials said. It was to be expected that the virus would come to Germany, Jens Spahn, Germany's health minister, said in a statement on Tuesday. But the Bavarian case shows us that we are well prepared. The World Health Organization said on Friday that there appeared to be a case of human-to-human transmission in Vietnam, where a person who had never been to China, but who had a relative who had visited Wuhan, was confirmed to have the virus. Hong Kong put significant limits on travel from the mainland. Hong Kong on Tuesday put in place a broad series of restrictions aimed at controlling the spread of the coronavirus by limiting the number of mainland Chinese travelers entering the territory, one of Asia's busiest travel and financial hubs. The restrictions, which included the suspension of high-speed and other train services between Hong Kong and the mainland, a 50% reduction in the number of flights, and a ban on tourism visas for many travelers, were announced by Carrie Lam, the city's chief executive. The regulations, which apply to some plane, rail, bus, and ferry travels, will begin on Thursday. They follow days of rising pressure from healthcare workers, epidemiologists, and even pro-Beijing politicians who have traditionally supported Mrs. Lam's government. Hong Kong has so far recorded 8 confirmed cases of the virus. Tibet, the only region in China that has yet to report any cases, has temporarily closed all tourist sites, state news media reported. Major Chinese cities, including Shanghai and Beijing, have suspended long-distance bus services. The medical faculty of the Chinese University of Hong Kong called for more restrictions on border checkpoints as the virus spreads across China. Workers from Hong Kong's hospital authority have planned a strike for the next week to demand a law requiring the wearing of masks in public and banning all visitors from entering the city through the mainland. Ethiopia and Ivory Coast test suspected cases. Numerous African countries are shoring up coronavirus screening efforts at major airports, and samples from at least 5 potentially infected patients were being tested. Ethiopia's State Minister of Health confirmed on Tuesday that 4 potential cases were isolated in the capital, Addis Ababa, pending laboratory tests. On Monday, officials in Ivory Coast said they were testing a suspected case related to a female student who had traveled from Beijing to the capital, Abidjan. The epidemic continues and travels between China and African states and has increased at a rapid pace as Beijing has ramped up its diplomatic, economic, and political support for African states. Chinese firms and migrants have been setting up shop in cities from Nairobi to Johannesburg. Data from China Africa Research Initiative at Johns Hopkins University put the number of official Chinese workers as of 2017 at over 200,000. African entrepreneurs have moved to Chinese cities, while African students now make up a large percentage of foreign student bodies in China. On Tuesday, Kenya Airways announced that the health authorities had quarantined a passenger who traveled from Guangzhou. Because of Chinese New Year celebration, a good number of African students living in Wuhan or Hubei traveled home before the extent of the virus became clear, said Hannah Ryder, chief executive of Beijing headquartered consultancy Development Reimagined. It's unclear how exposed they may have been and if governments have the resources to check on them, she said. World Health Organization buries updated global risk assessment in a footnote. The World Health Organization revised its global risk assessment for the coronavirus outbreak from moderate to high, but concealed the change in a footnote buried in a report published on Monday. The change to the report, which coincided with a visit to China by the organization's Director General, risks confusing the public about the severity of the outbreak, which has killed more than 100 people in China and been found in at least 14 countries. In a statement, the organization said the Director General, Tedros Ghebreyesus, and Chinese officials discussed measures to protect the health of Chinese and foreigners in the outbreak areas, including possible alternatives to evacuation of foreigners if there are ways to accommodate them and protect their health. Chinese state-run media reported that Dr. Tedros met with President Xi Jinping of China and spoke highly of Chinese efforts. Mr. Xi urged the health organization to assess the epidemic in an objective, fair, calm, and rational manner. In Hubei, medical workers have complained about a desperate need for resources to treat thousands of patients who have at times overwhelmed hospitals. The group, which is in the United Nations body, was criticized when it refused twice in recent days to declare the outbreak a global emergency despite its spread. Shortage of test kits in China prompt concern that cases have been underreported. A shortage of medical kits in China needed to quickly diagnose the coronavirus has slowed the country's ability to respond to the outbreak and fueled concerns that the number of cases has been underreported. China's Medical Products Administration said on Sunday that it had approved 4 new virus detection kits, including one that sequences the genetic makeup of the disease. But China's 3 leading medical device manufacturers said they did not have the capacity to quickly produce the products, according to state news media reports. Residents in Wuhan who arrived at hospitals to seek testing were told that medical workers did not have the kits needed to confirm the diagnosis. For new emerging cases of the virus, most local hospitals or public health laboratories will not be able to make a diagnosis, said Yuan Whuhan, the chairman of the infectious disease department at Hong Kong University. Thus, many cases will not be investigated at all if they are mild. A woman in Wuhan told the South China Morning Post that her uncle learned he had viral pneumonia after a CT scan, but that the doctor could not confirm it was the new virus because no testing kits were available. China may have to rely on outside technical support as frontline responders battle to contain the virus's spread. Experts said the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation said Sunday that it would commit $5 million to help China to help respond to the crisis, including efforts to identify and confirm cases. U.S. health officials recommended avoiding China, and businesses follow suit. As the outbreak continues to spread, global companies have begun to limit their workers' travel to mainland China, and China's biggest companies have urged employees to work from home. On Monday, health officials in the U.S. urged travelers to avoid any non-essential travel to China, and many companies cited that as justification for internal travel bans. The new guidance from the CDC warned that transportation in and out of Hubei province, the center of the outbreak, is restricted, and that there is limited access to adequate medical care in the affected areas. Companies with large operations or interests in China, like General Motors, Honeywell, Bloomberg, and Facebook, have all warned employees not to travel within the mainland in a flurry of emails in recent days. Honeywell, which has offices and operations across China, said it had restricted travel to certain regions without specifying them. A spokesperson for General Motors said the company had issued a global ban on travel to China, under which only business crucial travel would be allowed. Bloomberg told its employees in Hong Kong and mainland China to work remotely until further notice, and it barred other employees from traveling to either place for the next 30 days, according to an email seen by the New York Times. Facebook said it asked all employees to suspend non-essential travel and asked those who had recently been in China to work from home for a period of time. The authorities in China have extended the Lunar New Year holiday to February 3rd, and some of China's biggest cities have gone further, telling businesses not to open until next week. The country's biggest technology companies, including Alibaba, Tencent, ByteDance, Senya, Mama, Natisse, and Didi, told employees to work from home from February 3rd to February 10th. Natisse, an internet and entertainment platform, asked employees returning from another city within China to quarantine themselves for 14 days. Worries rise about the outbreak's economic impact. After sharp losses around the world on Monday, investors on Tuesday continue to assess the long-term economic effects of the coronavirus epidemic. The verdict was mixed. Investors abandoned stocks in Asia while markets in Europe steadied. In the U.S., the S&P 500 was up more than 1% on Tuesday. Many of Asia's stock markets were closed for the Lunar New Year holiday, but those that were open, Japan's and South Korea's, fell as futures trading in China slumped. Money poured into safe haven assets like gold and pushed up the value of the United States dollar. Hong Kong's stock market will reopen on Wednesday. In China, where authorities have extended the New Year holiday by a week, the major exchanges in Shenzhen and Shanghai said they would remain closed until February 3rd. The coronavirus is the number one threat to financial markets currently, as global investors are becoming jittery on the uncertainty, said Nigel Gray, the founder of the investment group DeVere Group. Back in New York from Wuhan and into a self-imposed quarantine. Some of the last passengers who arrived at Kennedy International Airport before direct flights from Wuhan were canceled have quarantined themselves at home. Scott Liu, age 56, who leads an association for immigrants from Hubei, said he confined himself to his house in Queens. He said he and his fellow passengers on the Wuhan flight learned of the lockdown in the city mid-flight. He said he has not felt sick, but is taking precautions because he knows symptoms take time to appear. His friends have dropped off on his doorstep traditional Lunar New Year dishes like lotus root and pork rib soup, salted fish, and dumplings. Last year, they were host to a big New Year celebration at a banquet hall in Flushing. This year, Mr. Liu said all the events are canceled. Everybody is in a state of panic, he added. I miss my child. Central Virginia mother says 8-month-old daughter died of coronavirus. This was posted on WLBT.com on January 24th of 2020. Richmond, Virginia, one Chesterfield mother says her 8-month-old daughter died from a strain of the coronavirus less than a year ago. Carlita Claxton says the news of a new strain of the virus is not only hard, but she wants everyone to be aware of the warning signs. What we are seeing now is a new strain of the coronavirus. There are 7 different strains that have been around for years, the doctor says. There's a good chance you have already come into contact with it. It's very hard for me because I cry all the time about her, Claxton said. Claxton was sitting at home earlier this week when she saw coronavirus come across the TV. It made me upset. It made me cry. It was a lot of emotions that were all over me, she said. Not even a year ago, her 8-month-old daughter, Carlia Claiborne, died. The death certificate cites coronavirus as the cause. I miss my child, Claxton said. Carlia was a triplet and her mom noticed something wasn't right in January of 2019. So they went to VCU Medical Center where doctors gave her oxygen and sent her home. It wasn't even 2 days later she was sent back to the hospital because she started breathing funny and very deeply. She couldn't catch her breath, Claxton said. This time the 8-month-old never got out of the hospital. She died on February 11th. Most people already experienced the coronavirus, Dr. Marsh Coutinho said. Dr. Coutinho is the medical director of the Henrico Doctors ER and says it wasn't the new strain of the virus that killed Carlia. Coutinho says there is a difference in what is being seen now and what has been seen for years. The coronavirus family is a family of 7 viruses and several that cause the common cold. People hear it as bronchitis or the viral cold, Dr. Coutinho said. Symptoms mimic the flu, but there will be respiratory issues as well, which include trouble breathing, lips changing colors, and coughing. Many also see fluid in the lungs, which is what happened to Carlia. It's not the same. This is a zebra and this is a horse. The horse we all see all the time. The zebra is very rare, but they are both horse-like animals, Dr. Coutinho said. Right now, there is no vaccine, cure, or treatment, Coutinho says. Many of the viruses originate in bats and later transfer into humans. The virus can be spread by coughing, so you need to cover your cough. If you feel you are ill, you should isolate yourself, Coutinho said. So, with all that being said, I just want you guys in America to stop living with your head up your butt and look at the news, see what's happening. Do whatever you need to do to prepare yourselves for anything that could happen, such as a quarantine like the city of Wuhan is having. I mean, they're building up walls around the city, they're using trucks and trailers to keep people locked in. And that's the same exact thing that us Americans have seen in several different movies. So just prepare yourself. You know, biological warfare is real. And I'm just looking at the news and the rates of how fast this stuff is spreading, and it is crazy. It's worse than SARS, it's worse than Ebola. So, like I said, keep yourselves contained, wash your hands. I'm praying for everybody, and I want you to like, share, comment your thoughts, turn on your notifications for more, and I'll be back.